All right, thanks. Hey, everyone. Thanks for joining the webinar today. My name is Nick Amobile, and I'm the CEO and Principal Consultant at Dosh42. We're a boutique data and analytics consulting firm and a Fivetran and Snowflake implementation partner. I'll be kicking off the webinar today. I'm joined by Stephen Mangold, the Manager of Business Intelligence and Analytics at PopSocket. We've been working with Stephen along with Fivetran and Snowflake to implement a centralized and fully automated reporting solution at PopSocket. In today's session, Stephen will walk you through the before and after reporting at PopSocket and why they chose Fivetran and Snowflake for the modern data set. If you have any questions at any time during the webinar, feel free to submit them into the QA panel on your screen, and we'll try to answer as many as we can at the live Q&A session at the end. The webinar is being recorded, and we will be sending out the recording to everyone within 24 hours of the session. And with that said, I'm happy to hand it over to you, Stephen.
Hey, thanks very much for the intro, Nick, and thanks to the team at Fivetran and Snowflake for hosting the webinar and giving me a chance to share where PopSockets came from and where we're going. So with that, we can jump right in. Let's start a little bit about me. So I'm Stephen Mangold. Like Nick said, I just recently was made the Business Intelligence and Analytics Manager here. I joined the team in 2016 as employee number 15, or at least concurrent employee number 15. Really small and scrappy team. It started in e-commerce. We were really an e-commerce centric business to begin with, and have since expanded our sales channels. Quickly moved over to e-com analytics. It's something that I really liked doing and brought a lot of value to the company. And then as we expanded those business channels, I started working in broader business intelligence and analytics about a year ago. And like I mentioned, really excited to be spearheading it now. One question I always get when I'm talking about our company is, what is a PopSocket? And I'm excited to say we're a few different things now. So our flagship product, the PopSockets Grip, is an expandable and collapsible grip and stand device that attaches to the back of your phone, tablet, laptop. I'm sure you could put it on a book or just about anything you could imagine to help you prop it up or hold it better. We have a new iteration of our product that actually you can twist the little top and remove it, and that makes it so you can switch your designs or materials or charge your phone wirelessly. We've got hundreds of designs and materials available for anything that fits your style, or you can upload your own image at our website, popsockets.com. And we are in a lot of major retailers that I'm sure you guys all frequent, Target, Best Buy, and obviously as a cell phone accessory, we're in Verizon and T-Mobile carrier stores too. We just recently launched a couple new products. We've got a new vent mount that goes in your car that's removable, and you can mount your phone for GPS navigation and all that stuff, mount it in the kitchen for your recipes or what have you. About 6 months ago, we launched a new wallet product that goes on the back of your phone and holds a couple credit cards and some bills, and we're putting a lot of efforts into expanding our product line in the future, and we're really excited about that. A little bit about the history of our company. We were founded just back in 2012 by a philosophy professor at CU Boulder, David Barnett. He was trying to solve the problem of how not to have his headphone cords tangle in his pocket. And originally came up with the PopSockets Grip as a way to manage his cords, and found that when he put it in his students' hands for product testing, they used it more as a grip and a stand. And we sort of migrated over to that being the main functionality. We hired our two first full-time employees in 2014, launched our second product, the mount that I was mentioning, just about 3 years ago. We sold our 1 millionth flagship grip just about 2 years ago, February 2017. I know you guys are into data, so a little metric here is we had a 3-year growth percentage between 2015 and 2017 of over 70,000%, and that earned us the Inc. 5000 number 2 fastest growing company over that time span. And we sold our 100 millionth PopSockets product, either a grip or a mount, in November 2018. I thought it would be fun to look at that sort of growth curve visualized. So here's our first 3 years of business, the beginning of 2014 through 2016. And these are cumulative units by month. and you see a nice sharp increase there showing, how our product sort of caught fire and our company grew. Of course, that growth sort of fueled our need for an expanded data environment, but you'll really start to get the picture when you expand it over our last 5 years, because this sort of exponential growth doesn't even register on this graph, where you see the past 2 years we've just been skyrocketing in the amount of units we can move, and therefore the amount of data we create and the amount of insight we need to keep improving. I made a few little call-outs on here just to, expand on the history of the company. You can see really early in 2016, we hired a VP of e-commerce. We were super e-commerce centric at the time. The next flag is when I joined the company. A couple months later, we hired a wholesale and marketing teams to help us really start expanding our reach into the market. About a year after that, we implemented an ERP software. First BI tools that we'll expand upon in a little bit came a couple months later, and then you can see the little flag there just about 6 months ago or 4 months ago when we started our data warehousing project that we're here to talk about. Oops. So to sort of start off in the early days of the company, the very early reporting, got some slide issues here, I apologize for that. In the very early days when we were, only really selling through e-commerce platforms, there was only, 10 or 15 of us, really small and scrappy team. We really did a lot of our reporting off of manual exports from all of the SaaS applications that we utilize. We ran our e-commerce through Shopify, which is pretty prevalent e-commerce platform in the market today. Obviously, in e-commerce, we were doing business on Amazon, and we had to leverage data that they provided to us, and then used ShipStation as an order management system, and QuickBooks as our accounting software. So a pretty tight amount of systems producing data for us. So there wasn't really a pressing need when I joined the company to have a cloud data warehouse or these complex models, because the only data we were generating was from a few systems, and it was pretty easy to do what we needed to do. That being said, we didn't need to do a whole lot of analytics, just because we were growing so fast, and it was more how do we keep up, how do we make sure we have the right inventory, how do we make sure that all of our orders are going from order to fulfillment and that sort of stuff. So we really focused on two reports that sort of helped us drive our business and know what was happening, but at the same time were more retroactive and showed us what happened instead of what is happening. And those were a design leaderboard of which of our graphics and later materials were selling best, and a little KPI dashboard for our website that had your pretty typical metrics of average order value, conversion rates, that sort of stuff. So I thought it'd be fun to sort of share snippets of those reports. This was our leaderboard for our designs. We sent it out every single week. Problem being that it was an Excel file, then screen captured, and it wasn't really giving us real-time information. So it was fun to look at to see which designs were doing best, but it didn't really help us make decisions on, what's underperforming, what's overperforming, how much value are we getting out from each position on our website. So it served some purpose, but it didn't really help us improve the business. Our KPI dashboard that was distributed as an Excel file did help us make a few more decisions, look at the different trends, and I was able to make call-outs and different suggestions, but at the same time, it still wasn't entirely actionable because it was a canned Excel file that I sent out every week. I had to update it and send it to the rest of the company anytime we wanted new data, and it was always just far enough behind what was actually going on that, it was fun to look at, but it wasn't really helping us make decisions. And then obviously any company is going to track their financial goals. We really only did a majority of our business through our proprietary e-commerce platform and Amazon, and we would track our goals through an Excel data dump that would pull in the right categories, put it in, and spit out nice little percent of forecast measurements. As we expanded our need to financially report, this was super helpful, but at the same time, it was still really retroactive. It wasn't in real time. It had to be updated by an analyst, and we spent a lot of time measuring what happened and not necessarily why it happened. And then as our business continued to grow, our need for different reporting platforms and softwares grew too. We really started breaking into the wholesale market I mentioned with the Targets, Walmarts, Best Buys in early to mid 2017. And with the additional complexity of selling our product, that means we had to introduce new softwares as well. So in August 2017, we implemented an ERP software, which I'm sure a lot of you are familiar with. It ran off a nice relational database in Azure and SQL Server and centralized a lot of our sales data and really gave us our first true centralized database of here is our company's data. In case any of you are interested, we chose Microsoft Dynamics NAV as our BI tool, and then, as our ERP, and then put a couple of BI tools over that database that allowed us to really start looking at more things in real time and run reports that are constantly refreshing over our production database. Those two tools are Jet Reports or Jet Enterprise. This is a proprietary tool to Microsoft ERP products, so I wouldn't be surprised if a lot of you haven't heard about it. It was a big enhancement to our reporting capabilities, but it still came with its own problems. So Jet uses a SQL-like query language. You put it into cells in an Excel workbook. Then you can run it against the database, and it'll populate your rows, columns, measures, all that good stuff. We still use it today for a couple of our staple reports, a lot of our financial reports, profits and losses, financial tracking. It's really good for that sort of stuff, but also has some issues. Super clunky. It's just slow and likes to hang a lot. Struggles with complex queries. If you're making, a bunch of joins or doing any intense filtering, it really struggles pulling the right data. And anytime you're dumping more than about 100,000 rows, it's going to chug on you. And as we continue to grow and hire from, me being employee number 15, and we just crossed employee number 200 last week, we really needed to put in a tool that we could put across the business and have it be more performant so we can encourage people to actually use the data that we were generating instead of looking at a slow-loading Excel spreadsheet and then deciding to close it because they were impatient and had work to do. So the other BI tool that we implemented that I'm sure a lot of you are more familiar with is Microsoft Power BI. It was really handy that we chose a Microsoft ERP. We use Microsoft Azure Database, so Microsoft BI tool only makes sense. This introduced a lot of value into our business. We could put it over that SQL Server. We could plug it into Shopify direct to the e-commerce platform. It had a Google Analytics connector. It goes to Excel Online or Google Sheets, connects to our customer service software, Zendesk, and really started bringing together our different sources of data. But with that comes issues. Maintaining the data consistency was super tough to do just because every time you wanted to write a new report, you had to bring in those data sources again, redefine your measures, remodel the data, and there wasn't really any way besides having a canned file that everyone starts every single one of their development projects on to maintain consistency throughout our ever-growing analyst population at the company. And then another complexity with there is in order to share it with users, you need to host it in a web environment. And they have a really nice web environment where you can put files from your local machine up, but it creates a lot of overhead in managing what files are in the web portal, what files are on your local machine. Are you maintaining consistency between what's in your development file locally and what's on the web portal? And at the same time that it introduced this value to our business, it also created complexities that, as we continued to grow, as you saw from that graph, we really needed to solve for, especially as we grew our analyst team to make sure that we were providing consistent information to the company so that we could use it and be confident and drive decisions with it. So about midway through 2017, we decided that this sort of Power BI Jet combo wasn't doing enough for us. And as our business developed and we were implementing CRM and different ad platforms and triggers and this and that, we really needed a way to centralize our data and have a single source of truth. And in particular, what sort of drove us to this project is being able to reconcile all of these e-commerce orders against each other. We do a lot of transforms in our order management system, and there was sort of a lack of confidence in our data pipeline, so our financial team was going through and auditing every single e-commerce transaction, which is hundreds of thousands a month, against what the order management system said we should have shipped, and what our bank data said we should have collected, and what was flowing to our general ledger accounts and our bank accounts within our ERP software, and just finding that there was a lot of integrity issues. They were spending upwards of 20 to 40 person hours a month trying to solve this issue, and it just wasn't sustainable for a startup environment as we grew. So we decided to look at DOS42. I know Nick introduced me in the webinar, and his team over there with Kaylin, Jack, and John was so informative and so helpful in helping us design what we needed to implement and then help us implement it too. And after kicking around a couple different options, looking at the BI tools out there, looking at the data warehouse softwares out there and the ETL softwares out there, they really helped us hammer it down to the Snowflake Fivetran Looker BI stack. And showed us how it can be super flexible and performant, and really help us solve that main finance issue, but also how we could expand it to the rest of our business and really start fixing a lot of the data issues that we do have. And with a little bit of those tools, obviously, we're here with Snowflake and Fivetran, so I'm sure you know a little bit about it, but Snowflake is a SQL-based cloud data warehouse. We really love that we didn't have to hire a team of engineers or architects to help us build this thing. We don't have to maintain the hardware on-prem. We don't have to worry about the data security. We don't have to worry about uptime. We don't have to be on call 24/7. And it was just really nice to offload a lot of that stress, so we didn't have to have those dedicated resources. We also really love that you pay for what you use. We really needed to implement the stack to solve for this particular issue. But as we make the stack more prevalent throughout the company, as we enhance our reporting and what we're trying to do out of it, we don't want to have to be paying 24/7 because all of that stuff takes some time. So the fact that we only have to pay when the warehouse is running, it shuts down when you're not running queries or importing data. If we need to pay a little bit more to get more performance, we can do all of that. If we run a product like a Redshift, you're constantly paying for uptime, and you're just bleeding money, and that causes, the stress of making sure that you're really providing the value that your company's paying for and being able to prove you're doing it. So just those little tidbits really prove to us that Snowflake is the right data warehouse software for our company as we grow. Similarly, Nick and DOS42 told us about Fivetran and how it could really help get these disparate sources of data into Snowflake in a way that was immediately valuable. As you know, Fivetran is data replication software, ETL software. They've got a team of architects that have modeled out all of these data sources and make sure that the right joins are in there when it's brought into the data warehouse, and all the tables are in the right place. We didn't need to have to figure out how to do all of this coding. We could just, create authentication for our Shopify app or our OMS app or what have you, and plug it in, and Fivetran automatically knew what to do. You can go log into Snowflake, and all of your data sources are right there. They update at timed intervals that you can control. There's a really, clean and simple UI that helps us control all of these things. And one other thing that we really like about it is, even though we had sort of this small stack to begin with, as we expand, Fivetran just has a huge amount of these connectors that really gives us confidence that any of the enterprise softwares that we choose will be able to own that data and get it into our data warehouse. And the last part of that stack is Looker, the BI tool. They're a big up-and-comer in the market, just sort of like PopSockets are, and Snowflake and Fivetran to that point. And it really helps us create these robust data models over the Snowflake database. Snowflake and Looker work really closely together. They have really nice connections into their products. And the main value that Looker gave us over Microsoft Power BI is that our analysts and developers can do things once and then put that throughout the company without any worry that people are looking at gross revenues differently or item sales differently or discounts differently. We get to define those metrics. Looker has a nice data dictionary, so users know what they're looking at, and then you get to put that throughout the company and make sure that there's the consistency in the data that we were lacking in our previous stack. And like I mentioned, it's a really nice, simple UI for users to come and drag and drop data and do visualizations and export to Excel if they need to do that. And it's a really powerful software for our analysts to query, model, and make visualizations that are becoming more and more needed in our business as we grow. So a little bit more about the value that we've delivered. We're putting numbers in the user's hands. If you came up to me a year ago or 18 months ago, I would tell you that we were constantly getting questions of, where can I find this data? Where can I find information about my customers? Where can I find information about my product? And the answer is always, it's out there, but you need to grab it from here or filter this down or really go digging for your data instead of having your data right there working for you and helping you do your job. We're no longer worried about, I touched on this a minute ago, about adding additional data sources too. When we're in a Power BI environment, you really have to think about the softwares you want to add to that stack because you don't know if there's a connector. You don't know how you can efficiently model that into your existing data model. And of course, there was no real centralized data warehouse. It was a series of data lakes, and you had to let Power BI do the modeling, and Power BI sort of be the de facto modeling layer. And that's, it worked for that, but it's not exactly what the software was built for. And our analyst team of 1, now 2, and hopefully 3 pretty soon was really struggling with that. And the other thing we really like about implementing this stack is, as we build out our analyst team, we don't have to worry about constantly meeting to make sure that we're on the same page. We're talking to the same data sources. We can talk about the different measures that we want to make and how we define those, but then once those are defined, you can really permeate that throughout the company without worrying about people getting misinformation or defining something differently. You develop it once, and then everyone has the same looks, right? And another thing that we really love about the stack is that it's going to help us grow how we need to. So even though we've solved or have begun to solve our data pipeline issues that I mentioned with our finance project of starting off with the e-commerce platform, the order management system, the payment gateway, the ERP. As we need more insight about our business, we now have a technology stack that'll support that. We can get retailer data into the system, either from dumping it into an FTP and importing it, or one aspect of Snowflake that's really exciting that we look to explore is this data share part of it that they have, where if there's another customer on Snowflake, Snowflake will port the data over to the, in our case, to the customer or the manufacturer's data warehouse without having to worry about doing any of the ETL or pipelining or data security. Snowflake will just share it as long as both parties use Snowflake and agree to it. So that's something we're really enthusiastic about. We are about to change our e-commerce platform from Shopify to a Demandware environment, and without a true data warehouse, we wouldn't really have a place to merge those data sets, and we wouldn't really have the ability to merge it either because of the differing schemas. So as we transition, we can use the power of Snowflake, use the power of Fivetran and Looker to make sure that not only are we replicating the data in the right place, but we get to model it for consistency. So instead of having to start over or marry these data sets every time we have a question, we get to just create one sort of joined table of this is our e-commerce data and this is how we're defining it, and we don't have to worry about our data stack and our BI stack dictating what we can do with the business. we're starting to spend more money in marketing and social media data, and we need to be looking at cost per clicks and ROIs and making sure that we get to see really, really in-depth product performance as we spend those dollars and make sure that we're, delivering the impact. And Fivetran has connectors into Google, Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, any of these places where we're going to serve ads. Fivetran has already figured it out for us. All we have to do is create account credentials, hook it in, and have an initial sync of our data, and it's all going to be there for us to model and help us make those decisions that we need to make to continue being successful. And then, like every company, we just generate lots of data, and we generate lots of data on these disparate applications, and as long as it's in their database, we don't really own that data. If X company that we use goes out of business, all of our history might be gone with it. So being able to leverage this technology stack to own all of our data and make sure that it's all in an environment that we own and we manage and we have access to is a really exciting prospect and will really help set us up for success going forward. And the exciting thing is, with all of this business growth, with all of these applications we're adding, with all of these different data sources we're adding, we've picked a BI stack that can support all of it. Like I mentioned, Fivetran has a connector for just about everything that we're planning on using, and if it doesn't, it hooks into just about any database you can imagine, Redshift, Snowflake, Excel files, what have you, to be able to get our data to where it needs to go. We can have our analyst team focus on driving action from insight instead of having the analysts constantly fidgeting with numbers and maintaining consistency throughout them and developing hundreds of reports with different tweaks depending on what user wants to see it what way, and just worry about getting the data, modeling the data, and teaching users how to use Looker, because that's really their interface to this data. And we really love that Snowflake, Fivetran, and Looker are companies that can grow with us. Like I started the presentation with, we really grew at an insane rate, and it really took off about 2 years ago, and that introduces a whole lot of challenges of, quintupling your workforce in 18 months, and how do you make sure everyone's on the same page, and how do you introduce all of these systems that create sales efficiency without leaving all of its data on the floor or creating these non-joined sources of data. And Snowflake, Fivetran, and Looker are constantly thinking about development, constantly thinking about how they can make their platforms better, constantly asking for feedback from their customers, which is really exciting for us because we're going to have challenges in 6 months that we don't even know exist today, and even if we're not thinking about it, our partners are, and they're going to be able to support anything or most anything that we need to do with our data in the future, and we're really excited about that. So that's what I put together for everyone today. Thanks for taking the time for listening, and I'd love to throw it back to Nick and do some Q&A.
Awesome. Thanks so much, Steven. Really enjoyed the presentation. So now, as you mentioned, we'll open it up to question and answers. Feel free to submit your questions via the Q&A box chat window. And I'll just kick it off to start off, Steven. I think one of the things that we've seen in projects is that sometimes, users aren't necessarily used to having the data at their fingertips. So, what's one of the things that you guys have done to really drive adoption to the platform so that, people get excited about the sort of new stack and really use it in their day-to-day work?
Yeah, that's a really good question, and it's been one of the main challenges that we've had so far. People are so siloed in their individual tasks and roles and don't realize that, we have the ability to make their job better. So the way that we've approached that is, first off, we've implemented, we're calling it the analytics office hours in our company. And it's for an hour every week. Users can drop in either on a video call or in person and just ask questions about what they're seeing and get really acquainted with their particular sources of data and make sure that they're not flying blind on any of this. With an analyst team, like I said, of 3 in a company of over 200, it's, we're not available 100% of the time to really go and set up each individual user. So giving them a forum where they can come to us and be able to, ask. There are no stupid questions, right? We want people to understand where their data is coming from and how they can make it work for them, and really get them start being data focused in that. So certainly implementing Looker and giving this singular source helps. And I'll tell you, it's the most awesome feeling in the world when you're walking around the office and you see people with your reports open and they have their thinking cap on and they're like, wow, what am I really looking at, or what is this really telling me? And then you can go have a conversation. This is what it's really telling you, and these are how we generate these data points. And another thing it's really helped us with is cleaning up the data integrity. It's when we're making an error, entering an order or doing something like that. Now we can see the sort of fruits of that, or the issues that it caused, and really get people to start thinking about how their job interacts with our company data, and sort of getting them involved with what we're doing in the business intelligence organization here really drives that adoption. It's not foreign to them, and it's not inaccessible to them. Everything's right there, and we've implemented a way for people to get really under the covers with it. And we still, Nick, as you know, we've only really had this product delivered for about 3 months, but especially for the business unit leaders, we've seen a really good adoption of just jumping in and figuring it out and being able to get answers to their questions, basically. So, yeah.
Awesome. Thanks, Stephen. We're getting a few questions in now from the attendees here. One question from Abhishek from Proficient is asking about how you guys compared Redshift and Snowflake, and if you guys did a POC.
Yeah, so we definitely did a comparison of a couple different products, and Redshift and Snowflake were sort of the two finalists, right? I think Redshift has been an industry leader for a while now, and Snowflake has been up and coming for the past couple of years. And it really came down to a couple of the points I hit on when I was talking about Snowflake. And we found that, one, being able to separate those compute and storage cores was really helpful. That if we needed faster performance, we could add that, or if we needed more data storage, we could add that, but we could do it separately. And then when we weren't using it, we weren't paying for it. So not only the ability to sort of tweak what we need out of the product, but being able to only pay for what we use were really the driving factors of why we went with that. In addition to that, I'm sure if you search us now, you can see that we've had a long and strained relationship with Amazon, and we really like doing business with companies that have similar values to us. And we found Snowflake is, it's started as a startup, and they've got a product that they're really proud of, and they want to share it with the world. And that's what we're doing at PopSockets is, we want to make each of our users' lives a little bit better, and we feel like Snowflake really aligns with those values too. So not only is there sort of a personal or business reason, but certainly we found that it fit the needs of our business more too.
Cool, and we're getting also a couple different questions along the same lines of that one about what other products you guys compared in terms of the BI tool as well as the ETL tool. So maybe you can talk a little bit about the comparisons you made at that layer of stack.
Yeah, definitely. So to start with the ETL tool, we really looked at Fivetran and Stitch. Those were sort of the two that we found that would fit our needs, that we didn't really have to worry about engineering or architecting these pipelines, and that had a large amount of connectors for the data sources that we already use. We found them mostly to be comparable, but the depth of service that we got with Fivetran, their willingness to get on and figure out how to get our Azure database in here, and figure out change tracking, and how to work with our SSH tunnel, and just this really personalized approach to what we were doing was certainly a driving factor in our confidence level in them. And then I have to give a lot of credit to Nick and his team at DOS42 for encouraging us to go with Fivetran, because they've done these implementations tens, if not hundreds of more times than us, and we really leaned on them to say, what do you think the best product is for what we're trying to solve? And they said, if you really want to go with Stitch, we'll go with Stitch, but we really believe and stand by Fivetran and think they're the best product for you. So yeah, that's where we really leverage Nick and his team to let us know what's going to help us be more successful. And so far, like I said, 3 months in, after the initial setup, we haven't had a single problem. Everything replicates every day. The tool works how we need it to, and it's sort of set it and forget it. So we're really happy. We listened to Nick and his team, and really happy with the Fivetran product. With the BI tool, if we didn't go to Looker, we would have stayed on Power BI. We were pretty happy with what we were doing there. And the driving decision of that was really that, again, Looker is an up-and-coming company. It's becoming an industry leader. It rises on that Gartner Magic Quadrant every year. And it really helps us model out these different sources of data and provide consistency throughout our company. And that's where the value add was. There's tons of different BI tools out there. Most analysts have experience with Tableau or have used it at some point, and it's a great tool, but we found that with how web-centric and how digital our business was, and we're in 15 different countries or whatever it is at this point, Looker really helped introduce that incremental value that we as a BI service could do things once and then have it go throughout the company. So yeah, like every business, we want to make wise decisions, and we looked at multiple different tools to make sure that we were going to have the right means to our end, and we really settled on this stack as being able to not only grow with us, but provide the value that we need right now.
Cool. And kind of piggybacking on that a little bit, got a question here about, where you guys do most of your data cleaning and business logic and sort of data modeling in the stack.
Yeah, so when we were mostly in Power BI, and don't get me wrong, we still have a lot of reporting run off Power BI. A lot of the data cleanup actually came in the sort of Power Pivot layer of Microsoft Power BI. If you're familiar with it, it uses Power Pivot, which has been in Excel for a while. I call it pivot tables on steroids, and you can make calls to your data tables and then do all of your cleaning there. You separate columns, join columns. I'm pretty sure it uses M as its language, and it really has a nice user interface to, again, not really have to write code and be able to do anything that you need to do. But not to reiterate too much, but every single time we had to write a new report, we'd have to do all of that work again. And that's just not an effective use of time. And one of the values that connecting Looker to Snowflake does, and how tight that connection is you can create that modeling in LookML, and you can create it once and have it go to all of your looks. So, for instance, just the other day, we were reading our sales invoice table. And it doesn't have a primary key. It has a sort of joined primary key where it has a document number and a line number, but within that table, there's nothing individual. So we went into LookML, we concatenated that document number and that line number and was able to create a compound primary key to do aggregate measures on that table. And we have to do it once. And now every single report that uses that data source just knows this is the new primary key for this. If that was in Power BI, I'd be going to 10 different files, doing it 10 different times, making sure I didn't forget any of the files, and then re-uploading all of those 10 reports to our online portal. So we're really excited about taking that modeling sort of one level upstream and letting it happen once and then go throughout the company instead of happening 10 times and then hopefully you covered all of your bases. So I hope that answers the question, but the ability to do that in LookML is something that we're going to totally leverage going forward.
Yeah, and that's actually just got a question in here about sort of, potentially moving that data modeling from Looker into Snowflake. Just kind of wanted to get your opinion on that. I think you kind of alluded to it in your last bit of that comment there.
Yeah, I mean, at this point, we're really happy with what we've done, but that doesn't mean that it's not an option in the future. I'll be honest and say that we haven't really talked about doing that just because we're so happy with what we have now. But if we found that it introduces value, or if we were consulting with Nick and the team and they said, hey, we can really clean up this issue or that issue by moving it upstream to Snowflake, that's definitely something we'd be open to, because the things that we do in Snowflake today are so streamlined, and even though Looker does the modeling so well, we would have confidence that Snowflake can do that too because of all of the things it does do well. So full disclosure, we haven't really thought about that, but if it could provide incremental value to the business, we'd be completely into it.
Yeah, and kind of one of the things that we've noticed in our experience is that, I think you mentioned some flexibility that you have by keeping the modeling layer in LookML. You can change it really easily. You don't need to go back to the database and write a bunch of code to go change SQL code to refresh all your tables. So, in a lot of cases, we actually like to keep the modeling in Looker just to enable some additional flexibility. But yeah, I think you kind of alluded to that a little bit. Cool. Another question here, kind of more on the lessons learned. So if you had to restart the project, what would you change, or what kind of things would you maybe do differently or think about slightly differently?
Sure. This might be sort of a corny response, but the only thing I would change is to do it earlier, and to get thinking about this way before it became a necessity, and really implement this and have us thinking about how our data can work for us as we go. One of the biggest challenges we've had that this stack has really helped us with is getting the business to be more data focused. It was such a rocket ship to the top that it was more, how do we manage to deal with all of this influx instead of how can we use our data to make more. But at some point everything slows down or levels off, and then you want to be able to have the tools to answer these questions, right? So certainly we're super happy with all of the technology we chose and the partners at DOS42, and I'm not confident I'd change any of that. I'd just try to get it going before it was completely necessary, so that we had a little bit more time to think about the initial implementation and a little bit more time to be able to deliver an even more robust product than we have today, and deliver it to more than just our finance team. And that's really the second phase of our product right now, is now that we've brought in the initial data sources and modeled them out and created a bunch of looks and created a really in-depth report for our finance team. We need to migrate the entirety of our reporting over to Looker, because we're so thrilled with the functionality that it has, from hooking up to SMTP and doing all of our automated reporting that we do in Jet today, or delivering dashboards to people's inboxes, or really creating these true metrics instead of just vanity metrics that we've been reliant on today to help us look at book-to-bill ratios and look at sell-in to sell-through in our retailers and all of that. So really the only thing I would change today is get thinking about it before we needed it, so that it was there in full capacity when we did need it.
Cool. And this is actually a good question here. So, you kind of talked about in your presentation how quickly the company grew, not just in terms of sales, but also in terms of people. So how are you thinking about onboarding new team members? Maybe, I guess there's probably two aspects of this. One is, how do you think about onboarding new analysts or new analytics team members? And then also, how do you onboard, say somebody in marketing now, how do you onboard that person to think about data and to use the platform?
Absolutely. So with the analysts, it's a lot of one-on-one time, right? You create a forum to ask the questions and get answers and get them familiar with our data sources and data schemas and how we use it and the questions that the business users ask, and really get them set up for success when people start invariably coming to them to answer their questions. That's why we hired them as analysts. So in parallel with that, it's making, it's sort of the concept of data democracy, right? Is putting it out there for everyone to have, and encouraging analysts to answer other people's questions and really dig down deep and start thinking about what we're doing with our data, and really giving them the keys to the car too for the analysts. It's giving them our modeling files, letting them see the LookML code, letting them sort of make these diagrams in their head, or translating it from the LookML to an actual modeling diagram, and really encouraging them to roll up their sleeves and think like more than just an analyst, but almost think like someone in business intelligence, or a data architect or a data scientist type skill set, and really encourage them to expand upon being more than just data in, answers out, and really help them become part of what we're trying to do here. And with other employees that, we want to be able to help give them data to make decisions. It's, I mentioned starting off this analytics office hours. I think that's going to be, a really good forum for people to come in and get them to ask the right questions and steer them into thinking about how we're using the data today and how we could use it better, and how what they're doing, their job, influences the cleanliness of the data, and then giving them ways to ask more in-depth one-on-one questions with the analyst too, I think is something important. A lot of people don't want to talk in an open forum, or think their question is dumb when it's not, or are shy, or any personal characteristic that you run into in business in any vertical or any sector. So I mentioned that we use Zendesk as sort of a ticketing application for our customer service. We actually implemented that within our own IT and BI team, and all someone needs to do is go into their Slack app and type /report, and then type in their question or type in what they're thinking about, and I will get a direct message that I'll be able to spend some not face to face but one-on-one time with them and say, yeah, here's how the data that you're generating flows through, and here's how we've compiled it, and here's how you can look at things to really get to the insights you're looking at. And I've had that turn into hour-long video chats where people are just so enthused about the accessibility of this data and the way that they can use it to answer the questions that they already had and didn't know that they had the tools to get the answer to. So it's been one of our biggest challenges, just to be frank, of with so much growth and trying to grow the analyst team but not being able to keep up. It's really looking at these creative ways to give the user every single avenue they could possibly want to get their questions answered. The other thing we did, since I mentioned Slack, is we just started up a Slack channel that's come ask your data questions, and someone else probably has the same question, and we can answer it, and we can talk through it, and that means that if one person has a question, we can answer it for everyone, and we can refer people back to that, and we can do a Fun Fact Friday where we'll dig up something and share it with the group and say, see, this is how you can use your data to answer the questions you're already having, and that sort of creates this enthusiasm for people to use their data better. So yeah, like I said, it's been one of our biggest challenges, but I'd be lying to you if I didn't say that it's been a really fun challenge. And I mentioned this a little bit ago, but it's just so rewarding to see people getting into the software and using it and really feeling like they're a data power user and that they can do this on their own with the guidance of an analyst instead of everything being spoon-fed to them like it has been up to this point.
Yeah, that's awesome. I think those are really great tactics. I love the office hours and sort of the Slack, features that you kind of mentioned, and having a place where folks can, drop in tickets kind of, into like Zendesk. I think that's awesome. And so, yeah, and one thing that we've also seen work really well is just integrating kind of Looker training or data training into your onboarding process, and making sure that like on day one you're getting in front of new hires and showing them how important data is to the company, and just showing them how they can actually use data in their day-to-day job. I think that's been successful as well. So not always possible with super fast growth, but getting that somehow into whatever you're doing for onboarding is, I think, important as well. So.
Yeah, that's great.
Cool.
We'll go talk to HR in 15 minutes and make that happen.
Awesome. That's good to hear. Cool. And then kind of switching gears back to some of the more technical aspects here. We've got a question about how did you add velocity, sandboxing, and prototyping? Did Snowflake expedite sort of prototyping for you technology-wise with Fivetran? And I think we kind of touched a little bit on Looker a lot. So maybe talk about Snowflake and some of the features there that you have to try things out and sandbox and then prototype.
Sure, yeah. So, I mean, Snowflake is all virtual warehousing, right? So if you want a sandbox and you want a production and you want them mirrored, you can do that. You're not limited by the technology in any stretch of the imagination. Our limitations have always been, how many hours there are in a day and all of these things that we have to do. So, a lot of our tactics is making sure that each of these data sources is as consistent and clean as possible from where the data is being generated, and using sort of our our business analysts in conjunction with our business intelligence to make sure that's happening. Port all of it into Snowflake as sort of true data lakes, and then using LookML to model it how we need to do it. Being able to get those raw data sets into Snowflake and then use the stack to transform it how we need to, or create specific models or slightly different models or what have you. That's another place where the softwares have really sort of let us skirt a lot of these things that are likely best practices, but we could get around in order to solve the question that we answered right for our finance team. So there's going to be a lot of thinking about augmenting the stack, like I've mentioned, and making sure that we're doing things the right way. But like I mentioned in one of our last slides, we picked products that can grow with us. And part of the fact of growing over 40,000 or 70,000% or whatever that ridiculous number was over 3 years is we're not always going to have the time to do things perfectly. We talk internally about 80% solutions and getting things across the finish line in a way that we can start leveraging them to enhance our business. And this is certainly one of those where if we had 2 years to think through and diagram everything out and do it perfectly, yeah, we would have done that. But it just wasn't something that our business trajectory was going to allow us to do. And at the same time, we were able to implement a really well-documented and flexible data stack that can do anything we need it to do. To a previous question, if we needed to move the modeling upstream to Snowflake, we could do that. If we needed to create separate models for separate users, we could do that. We're launching businesses around the world. We can put those data sets into Snowflake and marry them and look at how the intercompany stuff interacts. So in a more roundabout way to answer your question, we likely should have done more with the prototyping and sandbox and all of that, but we didn't really need to. And part of that was leveraging Nick and his team at DOS42. If we were trying to figure this out from scratch, we likely would have had a lot more issues. But Nick and his team have done this before. They know the software. They were able to guide us in the right way, and they were able to introduce a lot of best practices, not only into our data environments, but now downstream into our business that I think have really helped enhance what we're doing.
Awesome, yeah, and I think one of the cool things about Snowflake that I don't know if we really leveraged that much yet, Stephen, to your point, is zero copy cloning. So you can basically copy the database, quote unquote copy, without actually copying the physical data, which is really great. And that creates this physically separate set of data that you can actually edit and change. And so that's a really great way to separate out dev, prod, QA, different sort of environments for your data. And obviously Looker that can integrate with like Git, and you can create branches and feature branches and sort of change tracking, so you can create things that aren't pushed to production yet, but you could test things out before you actually do that in terms of the data model. So so I think those are some great features as well, kind of piggyback on your answer. Cool. All right. I think that's it in terms of the questions that I see here. So thanks everybody for the great questions. Thanks also to Snowflake and Fivetran for hosting the webinar. Before we close out the session, I just want to kind of mention some next steps here. If you guys are interested in learning more about Snowflake and Fivetran, definitely take a look at the link here, fivetran.com/directory/Snowflake to start a free trial with either Snowflake or Fivetran. And finally, we'll also be sending out a link to the recording of the session within about 24 hours. With that said, that concludes our session today. Thanks everybody for joining us. Hope to see you on a future session, and thanks again to Stephen for presenting today. Thanks all.
Thanks, Nick. Appreciate it.
Take care, guys. Bye.